Hello and welcome. I am Zerbraxi. Have you ever had a series that you just expected to love, but ended up hating? I have several actually, but the subject for today is this pink guy. Always looking so cute and happy, and the dog loves him, but I hate him. But I want to love him.
Nintendo has often been pretty solid in pushing the industry forward by abolishing antiquated ideas. While Super Mario Bros. Is hardly the first game to ignore a player's score, despite still having it nonetheless, this release in 1985 shaped what video games would become following the arcade era. In many ways, the age of high scores and coin credits were gone, and the era of adventure had begun. That was easily the largest change. The Adventure, The Legend of Zelda in 1986 would double down on this idea by creating the purest of adventures for the home console. In many ways, Super Mario Bros. Saved the industry from the crash of '83, but Zelda proved that games were here to stay. There was a bit of a problem though.
Games are too hard. Make baby game.
Enter Masahiro Sakurai, a Japanese game developer who created wonderful works such as Meteos, Kid Icarus Uprising, and potentially gaming's ultimate fighter brawler franchise, Super Smash Bros. Sakurai is an absolute legend. This man shows off characters in Smash Bros. Announcements by playing the character and its opponent at the same time by literally playing each character with a single hand and doing so in a manner that's probably better than the average Smash player. He's also known for working so hard that he regularly ends up in the hospital during his projects. In an interview, he actually confessed that during the development of Smash Ultimate, he was hospitalized due to overwork, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but he says, quote, "I just get an IV drip and go back to work like normal," end quote. I will never look at Smash Bros. The same way again. Despite Sakurai's popularity in recent years being mostly due to Nintendo's franchise brawler, what originally put him on the map was far different. Video games were notoriously hard during the 80s. This difficulty in some titles was just cuz, for sure. The fact that the Ninja Gaiden series on the NES only gets harder each entry, and the first one is one of the hardest games I've ever played, just shows how far the industry would go in order to provide that sense of challenge. The second and more common reason for the insane difficulty, though, was game length. It's no secret that games were short back in the day, insanely short in most cases. Castlevania is often heralded as one of the greatest games of the 8-bit era, yet it can be completed within a few hours on average. The solution to this problem? Crank up the difficulty and turn what 3 hours is into 6. While this did in fact increase the value per hour, everyone knew how artificial this really was. Enter Sakurai, who approached Nintendo with a concept for a new game, one that didn't bother with inflated difficulty and instead just gave the experience as is. After months of designing the mascot character, not liking any of them, and hoping someone would probably create something better than a blob with shoes, no one did, so the character Popopo was born.
Oh man, that name sucks.
Except there was another problem. No one liked the design, but they really didn't like the name. So finally, Kirby was settled on.
Whew. Well, let's just make sure they don't do something stupid, like name the villain now DDD. Oh, come on.
But there was another problem. Shigeru Miyamoto, most famous for Zelda, Donkey Kong, and hating that stories were told in the Mario RPG games, no, seriously, he thought that Kirby would look best as a yellow character while Sakurai wanted him to be pink. The solution? Make him white and pretend the argument never happened.
It's important to remember that Sakurai was only 19 when he made Kirby, and Miyamoto was a legend, a titan of the industry. He was the savior of gaming who saved it from the crash of '83. What was Sakurai supposed to do? Just turn around and make Kirby pink behind Miyamoto's back? Oh, you son of a bitch!
So what we have is Sakurai creating a new character in a new franchise designed to be easy for the Game Boy handheld system. It's been an awfully long time, but I think it's only fitting that I finally jump into this franchise. Up until now, I've only played through Kirby Superstar, which I genuinely loved, a couple levels of Crystal Shards, and Kirby's Epic Yarn, which I disliked so much that I practically swore off the series. I want to like Kirby. The Puffball is an icon of the industry, and at a glance, I should love the platforming series. But Epic Yarn left such a sour taste in my mouth. It should be physically impossible to hate something this cute, but it's so boring. When I saw the first trailer for Kirby and the Forgotten Land, though, I knew. I just knew I had to give the franchise another fair shake. I promised myself I'd play the original Dream Land Trilogy with an open mind, and what comes of it, comes of it. Here is my journey and my thoughts through Kirby's Dream Land 1 through 3. Let's go! When it came to the original Dream Land, I had no idea what to expect. The first entry in such a legendary franchise can hold up masterfully well, like the wonderful Super Mario Bros., or be milk on a hot summer day, like the original Metroid. At least we got Zero Mission. The fact we're also starting the series on the Game Boy honestly didn't fill me with much confidence. I remember playing loads of games on that handheld back in the day, and even then, many of those experiences weren't very good ones. In spite of that worry, Dreamland is pretty impressive. While the controls are a little stiff, this might just be one of the smoothest Game Boy titles I've ever played. Precise movement is surprisingly doable, and being able to snap back to your momentum on a dime is an element of control I just hadn't accepted would be part of this journey. But there it is. Jumping, floating, puffing, blowing? Is that a good way to say it? It all feels so good. Yeah, that might not have been the best choice of words. Kirby's overall moveset is rather simple, but compare Dreamland to Super Mario Land, and the controls feel like night and day. Mario Land is a great platformer in many, many ways, but it's mostly great in spite of being on the Game Boy rather than on its own. Dreamland, though, just controls so much better than I had imagined. Something else I didn't anticipate was the lack of copy abilities. Yeah, you can tell I'm a Kirby noob because I had just accepted that Kirby always had copy abilities. Surprise! Nope. And, oh, man, does it show. While movement is great, there is a feeling that this game is lacking something. I know it's probably hindsight, but I think even then people could have pinpointed that Kirby needed something more. Remember, Sakurai envisioned this series to be easy. And, wow, Dreamland is very easy.
Because Kirby's a baby's game.
While I fully understand the intention of Kirby was to be easy, I just didn't expect just how easy it was going to be. Kirby's signature ability to float indefinitely really shows itself, as you can skip most of the stages that exist. The level design basically never punishes you for doing this either. Just float and skip the game. Now throw that quote on the back of the box. Kirby is often praised for its music, and the first game sets a strong stage. Signature titles such as Green Greens is wonderful and encapsulates the charm that is Kirby. Charm really is the king here. The animations, enemy design, level design, it's all designed to make you constantly daw. Combining the visuals with the music just makes it impossible to be in a bad mood. Unfortunately, the platforming just isn't all that interesting. With being able to skip everything and having the level design never deter the player from acting on this impulse, everything just feels dull or incomplete. The only real substance you'll find in Dreamland 1 is the bosses. While still extremely easy, there is a hint of something special here. The difficulty progression across all the boss encounters is some of the best pacing I've ever seen on a Game Boy game. Each boss and mini-boss gets slightly harder and slightly more interesting. I know that this is hardly a meaningful praise, as that's just how encounter design should be, but seriously, the rate of increased challenge is perfect. While the climax with DDD is nothing special in the end, it feels like a great wrap-up to this adventure with an amazing level theme. It's really weird for me, of all people, to say this, considering how long my videos can get, but that's basically all I have to say about Kirby's Dream Land, and that's honestly because that's all there possibly could be to say about this game. Dreamland is short. Extremely short. My first playthrough was 30 minutes. 30 minutes. Could you imagine being a child and asking for a new game, something that would hold you over for months until your next gift, and this was the game you chose? I would have been pissed. Granted, after you beat the game for the first time, you do learn a button combination to unlock extra mode, which is harder, but it's still incredibly short. This time, it took me an insanely long 45 minutes. You do unlock yet an additional option after beating extra mode called config mode, where you can give Kirby 1 HP. So I guess there's that, but just imagine this. You can complete everything Dreamland has to offer you in under an hour and a half. You could potentially beat this entire game in 1 or 2 days worth of bus trips to and from school. I can't imagine the sucker who had to hold out until Christmas to get another game.
Kirby's Dream Land 1 might be a charming experience for a first go-around, but paying more than $5 for the 5 levels is horrible, and it makes this game basically unrecommendable unless you're someone who just feels compelled to finish the first Kirby game because of, I don't know, historical purposes or the need to complete your list. But for now, I guess that means we're at Dreamland 2, and by this point, my fear is only validated. Maybe Kirby just isn't for me.
By the time that Kirby's Dream Land 2 came around, the series had just had its first breakthrough title with Kirby's Adventure on the NES and Famicom. The signature copy abilities had been introduced, and the philosophy that these games were intended to be Omega Easy had been firmly upheld. The fact Dreamland 2 was back on the Game Boy is equal parts odd and fitting, but here we go. Right out of the gate, I have some issues to get through here. The bosses are somehow easier than in the first game. No, really. Somehow all of the major bosses and mini-bosses from the original were considered still too hard, so they were nerfed. Really? Well, as long as the pacing is still good as the original. Nope. Dreamland 1 had a consistent upward trend in difficulty, but Dreamland 2 is just, it's all over the place. Some subsequent bosses aren't any more difficult or interesting than those prior. Heck, some of them are even easier than many of those that come before. I wasn't expecting it to be hard, but it's a shame considering just how good the first game nailed this pacing. Some level design at least tried to have a bit more of a challenge, but a lot of it just boils down to cheap tricks. For example, Red Canyon, World 5, Stage 2, has an auto-scrolling section with an actual trap you can't avoid unless you know it's coming beforehand. This doesn't just happen once, by the way. World 7, Stage 6 has another auto-scrolling section, keep that trend in mind, by the way, where the only way to finish this level is to guess the correct path. Not once, but multiple times. The only way to get through this level is completely trial and error, and there's seemingly no indicator for which path to take. Trust me, I've tried. You can't see if you've selected the right or wrong path until it's too late. Pick a path, bottom, middle, or top, and just cross your fingers that you chose correctly, because if not, you have to restart the section. This is horrible. There's no counterplay here. Considering this type of design is exactly what Kirby was designed to combat against, it's so strange to see the series implement these cheap tactics.
And this is exactly what I mean. I don't derive pleasure from saying that a game is bad or bashing on it. Like, I don't find joy saying that Final Fantasy VIII sucks. Okay, I might get a little joy, but this is it. I'm already down the hole. I've already committed. I've already started this video, and I might not like that I'm bashing Kirby, and you might not like that I'm bashing Kirby, but we have to do this. We just have to go through this, and I just have to accept that I might not like the Kirby series in the end. Except for the fact that Kirby's Dream Land 2 is kind of awesome. Wow, Kirby's Dream Land 2 is officially in the running for being in my top 5 favorite original Game Boy games.
I'm shocked. This is seriously so good. I'm just so impressed with Dreamland 2, like, truly. Where do we begin? I guess the most obvious spot is the copy abilities. Despite Kirby's Adventure introducing this mechanic first, Dreamland 2 not only brings it to the handheld system, but it also expands upon it in a way that provides more efficient scalability than you would normally think. There are 7 base copy abilities, including the 8th secret ability if you unlock the true final boss. More on that later. 7 abilities doesn't sound like a lot, even for a Game Boy game. And you're right, it's not. However, the copy abilities are very different from one another, and you'll undoubtedly see that in the background footage. Settling on less but more unique skills allowed HAL Laboratories to tinker further with the core mechanics, which in turn allowed the developers the capacity to create an additional level of variety. This mechanic would become known as the Animal Buddies. I briefly mentioned Kirby's companions in my Mounts and Video Games episode, but Dreamland 2 introduced 3 of the critters. We have Rick the hamster, who is able to walk on any surface without negative effect, Kaichan, a fish who can navigate the water incredibly well, and Ku, who can fly and easily has the best theme, looks the edgiest, and is straight up the coolest. Not only does grabbing these creatures change the gameplay slightly, as I just mentioned, but they also serve as an extra health bar, and more pertinent to this point, they modify each and every one of Kirby's copy abilities. What Shock does for Kirby isn't the same as Rick, whom isn't the same as Ku, whom isn't the same as Kaichan. Functionally, the end result may be kind of similar, but there's enough variance to feel genuinely unique. By having the player become more comfortable with the 7 basic Kirby abilities, they can also become more creative with the uses from the modifiers of the Animal Buddies. I can't overstate this, but if Dreamland 2 had the same quantity of copy abilities as Adventure and introduced the Animal Buddies, I am firmly confident that the level design and enemy design would be far less interesting because of just how many variables that would be to accommodate for. This becomes even more evident when you look at how to unlock the final encounter. Again, more on that later. You know, since I just mentioned level design, yeah, let's jump into that real quick. Whereas the original Dreamland had a combined total of 5 levels, which again is just absolutely absurd and honestly pathetic, Dreamland 2 flexes its fluffy pink muscles a bit by having 7 worlds with multiple stages within each world. World 1 might only have a few levels to run through, but by the end of the adventure, you can end up with 6 levels plus a final boss stage. Just in terms of quantity, this is radically different and changes the journey through Dreamland. While the first game took me about an hour and a half to do basically everything it had to offer, Dreamland 2 took me about 4.5 hours just to see the secret boss. Yeah, that time still isn't quite the extent of the 15-hour adventure of Link's Awakening or the jaw-dropping 40-plus hour trek through Pokemon. 4.5 hours aligns Dreamland 2 with the completion, though, of like Metroid 2, which is often considered one of the best Game Boy titles. I can accept this for a length for a Game Boy game. Not only are there more levels, but they are way better than the original as well. At the end of the day, the regular playthrough of each stage is still pretty easy though.
That's because Kirby's a baby's game.
Yeah, you can just still puff and hover over many enemies, but as Dreamland 2 progresses, you'll start to notice that the enemy placement becomes a bit more intentional in stopping that behavior. The start is very easy to skip what you don't want to play, but eventually you'll find more resistance. Passing over enemies will never completely disappear as a potential gameplay option, but often you'll bump into enemies that will force you out of the sky, or at the very least, limit your ability to stay afloat. This is a great call, as it does add a bit more challenge, and Dreamland 2 is way more challenging than the first game. The auto-scrolling sections alone will boost the difficulty way up in comparison, and not just because of those stupid traps I mentioned earlier in this section. Also, just because you're pressured to move forward and will inevitably make mistakes due to that increased tension. Enemies are often set up with a great variety in mind, so each environment gives off not only a unique visual feel, but also a more interesting habitat. This next statement is about to be potentially the most controversial one of this whole video. Many Kirby fans out there are going to hate what I'm about to say. However, to me, where the level design shines brightest is in a collectible called the Rainbow Drop. I don't just like rainbow drops. They are my absolute favorite part about Dreamland 2. For those who don't know though, what the heck are rainbow drops? Well, in each of the game's 7 worlds, hidden in one of those levels will be a collectible. These are based on the 7 colors of the rainbow, and by collecting all 7, you will not only unlock the final copy ability called the Rainbow Sword, but you'll also be granted access to the secret ending of the game and fight the final hidden boss. I haven't touched much on the story, mostly because it's basically non-existent, but a quick summary is that King Dedede is being possessed by a creature called Dark Matter. His goal is to shroud the world in darkness, and Kirby has to stop him. Normally, you'd fight the possessed King Dedede, be teased there was more, and that's it. However, by going after all of the rainbow drops, you'll unlock this final fight. This duel with Dark Matter is nothing like the other bosses. Where normally you'd be dodging attacks to use stars to shoot back at the bosses, this time it's much more of a traditional duel, waiting patiently, having the full momentum when moving across the screen, sneaking in a strike or two when you can. It's similar to a boss that you'd find in other games outside the Kirby franchise, and it's a nice breath of fresh air to the whole experience. Also, not only is this boss easily the hardest fight in the game, it's hands down the hardest boss fight in the entirety of the Dream Land Trilogy.
Wait, this was supposed to be a baby's game, damn it.
And unlocking these rainbow drops is the hidden difficulty slider for Dreamland 2. While the first couple are easy to get and just require something simple, like having Reckon the Parasol ability at the same time, some of the later drops become a real struggle. The genius here is that if you don't care about getting that secret ending, then this isn't an issue. You can enjoy the default Kirby experience, have fun, and move on. Great. If you want the full scope of what the game has to offer, then Kirby isn't the baby's game I planned for. I died a lot trying to gather all of the rainbow drops. Many of those deaths were just trying to even figure out how to get them in the end, and not even by trying to acquire the actual item. I don't want to spoil some of these for those who might want to try that challenge, but seriously, this could be really tough. Like, you might need an animal buddy and a copy ability that never shows up in the stage where the drop is, so you have to seek those two things out, go back into the level with the drop, and be very careful not to take too much damage, otherwise you'll lose your animal buddy. If you do lose that animal buddy, you get the pleasure of exiting the stage and doing it all over again. What makes this even worse is that the level I'm referencing is clearly designed against that animal buddy in mind, so you're overcoming an environment crafted specifically just to make you fail with that specific mount, while you have to take as little damage as possible just to get to the room with the rainbow drop, and I hope you didn't forget the correct copy ability along the way while you're at it. While this can feel antithetical to what Kirby was designed to be, this optional gameplay style had me fall in love with Dreamland 2. Doing all of that to eventually get to the Dark Matter fight, die like 20 times, and overcome him after 30 plus minutes of attempts surged me with a feeling that is just so rare in the modern gaming age outside of select experiences. Kirby's Dream Land 2's default playthrough is easy. Extremely easy. The genius is that the game can also be incredibly challenging, not by selecting a difficulty mode in the menu, but by actively trying to complete all of the side quests designed to ramp up the challenge for those who dare to claim that they are worthy. I truly love this. And now just top that amazing level design off with potentially one of the best 8-bit soundtracks out there. What's most impressive is just how many great tracks are here. Compare the Dreamland 2 soundtrack to some of the greatest 8-bit OSTs like Blaster Master. Journey to Silius. Street Fighter 2010. others, and it's surprising how well it holds its own.
Kirby's Dream Land 2 surprised me in every single way. I have to confess, at the end of Kirby's Dream Land 1, after I had finished playing it, I was so under the impression I was going to dislike the series that I had already started to outline and structure my script around the idea of not liking Kirby and just wanting to like it. I have never been so happy to undo so much of that work. And now, on to the final part of the trilogy.
Alright, so we're 1 for 1 with Kirby games so far. Not bad, and I'm expecting a good— Wait, whoa, what is this? This isn't Kirby. This aesthetic was ripped directly out of Yoshi's Island. Actually, thinking on it, this is perfect. Yoshi's Island has one of my all-time favorite aesthetics in gaming, and borrowing basically anything from Yoshi's Island will make your game better, especially Baby Mario crying. What's even more fun about Kirby using a Yoshi's game aesthetic is that years later, the catalyst for this video would be released, Kirby's Epic Yarn. That arts and crafts aesthetic would be dropped by the Kirby titles, but has now become the new standard style for modern Yoshi games. It's kind of funny to just see that flip occur. In regards to Kirby, this just means the game is even more adorable. Charm is definitely Kirby's strong point, and now having this expression of colored pencil on paper just amplifies anything adorable. Take these Waddle Dees and rowboats, for example. Insanely cute? Yes. Even better with this new aesthetic? Absolutely. Please, feel free to daw on any occasion, because Dreamland 3 is just so dang adorable. So overall, Dreamland 3 isn't all that different from Dreamland 2. Yes, this might be one of the best looking 16-bit games out there, but mechanically, there isn't all that much that the team mixed up. However, there are definitely some aspects we need to note. Similar to how Dreamland 2 has less copy abilities than Adventure Before It, Dreamland 3 has less copy abilities than Kirby Superstar, which was just released prior. Remember at the start of this whole journey, I mentioned my love for Superstar, so color me surprised when I sucked up a Poppy Bro and didn't get the bomb skill. This was more disappointing than you might ever know. But if the player can enjoy the creativity with the animal buddies again, then this won't be too much of a distraction. Thankfully, there's good news. Not only are Rick, Kaichan, and Ku the best one back from DL2, but we also have the introduction of Nago the cat, Pitch the bird, and Choo Choo the octopus. Technically, Gooey also exists as player 2. Gooey does appear in Dreamland 2, but only if an animal buddy from a mini-boss is the same as the one you already have, and I've also seen that a female Gooey can appear, but I've never seen one on my playthroughs. Nago, Pitch, and Choo Choo are responsible for carrying that variety potential as 3 new modifiers for the abilities that we already know by now. In fact, there's only one new copy ability introduced, which is Clean, which you can get from these witches named Kiki, clearly a nod to Kiki's delivery service. While this move might sound kinda stupid, there is definitely something hilarious about sweeping enemies to death. Easily the best thing about the new Clean ability though is that if you modify it with Kaichan, you end up being a plunger. Something else unique about the Clean ability is that this move exists in Dreamland 3, is really fun, and doesn't actually return to the franchise for 21 years until Kirby Star Allies on the Switch. The Clean skill wasn't used in the time that it would take for a newborn baby to be born and become legal drinking age in the United States. So, what else does Dreamland 3 do though? It's not much. This is actually my largest issue with Dreamland 3. If you've played Dreamland 2, then there isn't much to say. The gameplay is fundamentally identical. The level design is fine, I guess, but a bit forgettable at its best, honestly. Boss design is honestly a bit lacking. After the first encounter with Wispy Woods where this fake out exists, and the cool little nod to Dreamland 2 with the boss battle with Adu, the rest of the encounters just seem less inspired and are significantly less difficult or interesting than Dreamland 2's, and they were already pretty easy to begin with.
Yeah, baby game.
Music is still stellar, at least. This doesn't necessarily have the insane range of tracks like Final Fantasy VI, but each song takes amazing use of the Super Nintendo's audio capabilities. Some tracks offer some truly imaginative feels of excitement and joy, while others can evoke a calming slowness in the air. Okay, so there is something in Dreamland 3 that I do really want to talk about, and it's this game's collectibles to unlock the final secret boss. Similar to the previous entry, the player has to find certain items which will reward Kirby with a final ability and unlock the true final boss of the game. These collectibles are called Heart Stars, where in Dreamland 2 there were 7 drops across 7 worlds. Dreamland 3 has a Heart Star in every single level of the game, excluding boss fights. So what we have are 5 worlds with 6 levels in each world, meaning that we've gone from collecting 7 rainbow drops to 30 Heart Stars. Judging by the Kirby fandom's reaction to these Heart Stars, I get the feeling I'm about to say something very controversial again. I really love the Heart Stars in this game. This is yet again where the difficulty comes into play, and it works very well. Where in Dreamland 2, you're forced to scour every single level to try and find if a rainbow drop even existed in that stage. In Dreamland 3, you know up front that every level has one, and you'll even get a small chime noise indicating that you're in the area where the challenge takes place. Each Heart Star requires a unique task, often teased by the level's preview image. There's definitely a common trend amongst acquisition, such as level 1 in each world will involve flowers in some way, such as dusting them off. Level 3 will always include a memory minigame. Level 5 of each world involves bringing a specific animal buddy to the end of the stage. Some of these can be far more interesting though, such as the level where you get to help Samus by getting the freeze ability and killing all the Metroids in the area. There's another one where you have to solve a bunch of puzzles with different copy combinations in order to obtain components to rebuild Rob the Robot. None of these are particularly difficult beyond a couple of attempts at most, and this allows Dreamland 3 to have some longevity as well as variety that the first 2 Dreamlands don't have. I have no idea if this type of design stays in future Kirby installments, but a part of me really hopes it does. I love being in control over how much challenge I want in a game, and I never expected the Kirby series of all things to do it so well. Collecting all of the Heart Stars unlocks the final ability and the secret boss fight. Dreamland 2 had the Rainbow Sword and an awesome battle with Dark Matter. Dreamland 3's final copy ability is the Love Stick.
Really? Love Stick? I'm gonna have to put a mature audience's label on this video now.
The encounter with DDD is essentially more of the same from the last 2 games, so I don't have much to say there. The final boss starts off as Dark Matter, but only the dark eyeball part of the final phase from the fight in Dreamland 2. You need to repeat that phase, dodge the attacks, while landing some blows as Kirby wielding his Love Stick. After this, Dark Matter is dispatched and the real final boss shows up. Zero, a big white eyeball? Really? This is the final boss? Yeah, this is the encounter. It's way easier than the Dark Matter fight from Dreamland 2. Dodge attacks, beat him with your Love Stick until his bloody eye pops out and spews blood all over the screen.
But this was supposed to be a baby's game!
When I started this series, I was nervous, but hopeful. I knew the love for Kirby had to exist from something, and I even fondly recalled my own joyous times with Superstar. Epic Yarn just left such a very bad taste in my mouth all those years ago, and hearing discourse and criticism from some of the recent Kirby titles, it didn't particularly push me to want to try getting back into the series. Going back to the beginning with Dreamland was a very risky move, but I felt it important to see where the series started. If the basic building blocks of something great was there, I was confident I'd spot it. While the original Dreamland is skippable at best, Dreamland 2 and 3 were incredibly fun action platforming experiences that captivated me far more than I originally anticipated. Dreamland 3 is wonderful, and a great cap-off of the Super Nintendo era, but Dreamland 2 is genuinely phenomenal. I really do mean it when I say that it might be one of my favorite games from the 8-bit era. I really enjoyed my time with this trilogy, and I am so glad that the Forgotten Lands trailer was so good that it made me second-guess my original opinion on Kirby. But most importantly, I am interested in Kirby's future.
The future's bright for old Kirby and I. What's a series you thought you would like and just didn't get into? Maybe. Just maybe it's worth giving it another shot. It was for us, at least. Ain't that right there, Big Kirb? We'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye!